In today's Unplugged interview, we have a very close friend of mine, actually a brother. Dan Redford is coming on. Dan has been living in China over the last 7 years. He has started a digital marketing company connected with the basketball community in China. We'll be talking about the significance of guys like Kobe Bryant, Stephon Marbury, Yao Ming, what they have done to move basketball forward, as well as a little Michigan State talk, because Dan is a big Michigan State alum and a big supporter, as well as Wendell Brown, a 30-year-old American football player who is currently stuck in jail the last 2 years. We'll talk about those stories and more with Dan here in this Unplugged interview. Be Different podcast is back. This time we have an Unplugged interview. We have Greg Wichard, we have Nick Given, Brad Redford, per usual. But we have a very special guest today that came from all the way across the pond from China, from Beijing, from the Asian market. He is here. He is sitting right next to me. This is a guy that I know extremely well. As you guys know, my name is Brad Redford. My last name is Redford. To my left, I have Dan Redford. His last name is Redford as well, and yes, we are related. This is my older, wiser, slightly less intelligent than me, but this is my brother. This is Dan Redford.
I knew the dig was coming somewhere.
I can only stay so positive with you at all times. I mean,
so you're wiser, but he's more intelligent.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all. But
yes, it does. It absolutely makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. In my world, it makes sense. Don't ask me to explain it, though.
Brad's IQ's higher, but
this is
really?
You make better decisions.
Brad, where's ramen from?
Yeah,
this has always been a tough. So I've realized now that there's pho, there's ramen. Ramen is Japanese.
I'm glad we're tackling the big subject.
Ramen is Japanese. So, Dan, why don't you give a little background on yourself before we get rolling here?
I don't know where to start.
Do yourself a fair introduction here on what you do.
Well, it's funny to be here in Cincinnati where everybody knows you, but obviously, as you haven't talked about this on the podcast, I'm glad I'm here to set the record straight.
Wait, what?
No, I'm just you want me to introduce myself. I mean, I pretty much taught you everything you know. So, where do you think you got that? Where do you think he got his form from?
What, shooting form?
Yeah.
I heard he had a higher three-point percentage than you.
Well, if you go back in the statistics,
the attempts were a little bit smaller.
High school, 2005, 06
It was 2 for 4 on the season.
I think it was more like 15 for 30, but let's. Anyways, it's good. It's good to be here in Cincinnati. Yes, I did just move back from China.
Can you say I love the Be Different podcast in Chinese? In Mandarin?
I sure can.
Go ahead and do it.
我爱 Be Different 播客.
I like that. Can you say follow the Be Different podcast on YouTube?
在 YouTube 关注 Be Different 的频道.
Yeah, and say subscribe.
阅读不订阅.
That is perfect. Talented man over here. Who would have thought a 6'5" white guy from Frankenmuth, Michigan would wind up being fluent in Chinese and living in Beijing for 7 years? You also went to...
I was trying to do? I was trying to be different.
I like that. Dan, you also went to Michigan State. You're a very active, avid Michigan State supporter. And me, growing up as a Michigan fan, playing at Xavier, as much as it pains me to see Michigan State struggle... I enjoyed it at parts as well. So I want you to talk about Tom Izzo and Michigan State as a whole right now. Obviously going through some very difficult situations right now. And then you look at the basketball team. I mean, that was one of the worst coaching performances in Tom Izzo's tenure at the helm at Michigan State. A guy they used to say January, February, Izzo, April. Can't say that anymore. They lost in the second round to the 11th seed Syracuse. Syracuse 55-53. Syracuse shouldn't even been in the NCAA tournament. A really disappointing performance there by Izzo. You had 2 lottery picks, Miles Bridges, Jaren Jackson. He struggled with them all year, didn't know how to play them. They get 29 offensive rebounds against Syracuse, and they only score 53 points. And it really just seemed like Tom Izzo was trying to lose that game. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's a stretch to say he was trying to lose. I'm sure he wasn't trying to lose, but it was a pretty rough day for everybody. It's funny, again, being here in Cincinnati. I kind of 2 weeks ago it was like Bloody Sunday, Yeah, I thought it couldn't get worse, and then I came home and watched the last 3 minutes of the Cincinnati game. Ouch. we're all brothers in this. That was a rough day.
That whole Sunday was rough.
Yeah,
it was a rough day. At Michigan State go down, and I've always been a fan of Izzo, and it's fun to poke fun at the Bear a little bit right now. But he's obviously done a great job. Struggled as of late though. His time may be running a little bit short though.
It has been a very odd year, to put it lightly, for lack of a better word, for Michigan State University. And it's weird because we have had for the last better part of a decade, two of the most competitive and exciting teams in the money sports. Football with Mark D'Antonio, and basketball. Tom Izzo's been there for 23 years, so it's kind of been a golden era for Michigan State athletics. And for me, a little bit on my background, I just spent the last 7 years living in Beijing, which was a fascinating time in my life. And I served as the president of the MSU Alumni Club in Beijing for the last 6 years, which was a great volunteer experience. And Michigan State, like a lot of the other colleges across the U.S., has a huge number of Chinese students and a lot of alumni. So basketball, football games were always a big thing that we would do to get people together. So, and we've had winning teams, and haven't played the game, and you guys being sports guys, how the power of sports, and it brings people together, and nothing does that like winning and being on a national stage. So, last year with the football team doing so well and winning 10 games, I don't think anybody expected that after having the debacle the previous season with 3 wins. So the football team's riding high, and then we're thinking, okay, we're going to have this national championship run because we got 2 lottery picks sitting on the bench. And to be fair, you look at that whole season, we won 30 games, but it just didn't feel right. We didn't have the last 13 wins we had in the regular season, the Big Ten season. It was almost like we were playing with like limp.
Well, and it seems like
right.
Stories continue to come out about Michigan State, and a lot of it is concerning the administration as a whole. You have the Nassar situation. There's been more stories that have come out this week. Where does Michigan State go from here, and how do they move forward? How do they get past all of the negative press that they've been receiving over the last, especially 6 months here?
Yeah, I think we all, you've already had change in leadership. The president has stepped down, and the athletic director, Mark Hollis, has stepped down. But the revelation yesterday that the head of the osteopathic medicine department, which oversaw Larry Nassar, not only was negligent in responsibility to have oversight, but also it seems that he may be a sexual predator himself. It's a pretty raw topic. It's pretty rough. How do we move on? I think time and also a culture of accountability needs to be adopted by the leaders of the institution. And I've said this in the fallout from the debacle of the Syracuse game, and how Tom Izzo's kind of taken a lot of heat for it, not just how he coached the game, but also how he responded to the press and to the questions, and kind of made it seem like he wanted you to feel bad for him. To equate, Tom Izzo's handling of the media this year and how he's run his program to the awful realities of what Larry Nassar did it's not a comparison. But if you look at it, they're not the same thing, of course. But if you look at it as a whole culture of leadership at Michigan State, it's very much related. And I think he and other leaders at the university need to really start to change their tone and how they're leading and what they're saying, because in society, semantics matter. And as a leader, you have to adopt an attitude of accountability and say, I'm going to take the heat for this. This is my fault. This team should have won a national championship. But I also look at it in the context of what happened this year, and we probably were expecting a little bit too much with all of the unprecedented stuff that was happening off the court, to then also say, well, it's also important for us to win a national championship this year. I think myself and fans and students, alumni, we kind of also need to check our priorities too and see, what do we want our institution to represent? What do we want our athletic teams to represent? There's over 20 different sports that are accredited at the university, men's and women's teams. I think it'd be healthy for all of us to kind of take a broader look at things and support other teams at the school and look at it as a more well-rounded thing. So I think it's going to take a long time for us to regroup from this. But that's kind of starts at the top.
But there's a lot of alumni out there like yourself, like well-spoken, that want to be involved in the process of Michigan State getting back to where it was. And so as much negative press as Michigan State is getting right now, I mean, you can speak to the positivity of the alumni base. You can speak to the positivity of professors, what the university has done for you. If you're speaking to, other alums, other people that care about the university, what do you expect of them? What do you expect of yourself in, helping things get better?
Well, I believe in Michigan State. It formed me in many ways. It opened up the world to me, frankly. I mean, Michigan State actually sends more students abroad than any other school in America. So we have the number one study abroad program in terms of numbers in the United States. So you just kind of keep pushing those positive messages while also, I think, leading with some of the nasty stuff. And that's kind of one of the, in a sense of saying, listen, we got to deal with this stuff, but there's also all this other stuff that makes the university great, and that's why we're going to stick with it and rebuild it. I think that's one of my criticisms, and that's not just me. It's pretty much everybody except for the board of trustees and some of the higher level folks on the administration, is they're trying to lead with the positive and then kind of saying, oh, well, we're dealing with this other stuff. I'm thinking you got to reverse that, but don't ignore the positive stuff, because otherwise you're just going to go down this road of to the point where the university has no reputation left.
Well, you've obviously stayed connected with the university even since Michigan State and moving all the way to China. Like, how the heck did you end up in China? Because people ask me as your brother, like, I'm in Cincinnati, I went to Xavier, I played here. Like, I had no interest in moving to Asia, and then you decide to move, not just go to China and study abroad for 3 months, but you decide to live there for 7 years. It's really a fascinating story.
I think you guys talked about like the chicken dinners and the Germantown
podcast
a little bit?
We haven't
people know that about you.
We haven't touched on that too. Are you guys familiar with Frankenmuth, Michigan?
We'll get there.
Of course,
we drove by it once.
Of course.
Greg, what do you know about Frankenmuth, Michigan?
I know there's a giant Christmas store there.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's
what I know.
Bronner's.
It's a very special little town, and it's a very little town. It's a little town with a big heart, and
I think little can be seen as kind of a negative. A small town, I like small better than little.
Okay,
can we go small town?
We'll go with small.
I think there's a difference in. Would you rather be called little or small? Smaller.
I think
neither.
Little.
It's
small town.
People called you.
We'll keep going.
You kind of. All right. Anyways, we'll go there. So I think having grown up in a small town like that, there, I used that for you. I was curious. I had a very healthy curiosity, I think, about what was outside. And, at Michigan State, I started taking Chinese kind of on a whim. I was looking for something to do. And
God, I did so many different things in college. I was looking for something.
And then I went to China my sophomore year on one of those MSU study abroad programs. And when I landed there, I just remember, and I still can, sitting here with you now, remember what it felt like getting off the plane in Beijing, a city of 20 million people, and it was just an experience and a place that I had never understood, and it was just this new exciting feeling that I'd never felt before. So I think that just sense of adventure that was met there in China really opened up a whole new world for me, quite literally, and it led to what has now been a 10-year journey of going back and forth between the U.S. and China and living there full time for 7 years.
But at what point are you like taking a class there and like enjoying the nightlife, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, screw it, I'm going to stay here?
Well, it's fine. It wasn't the plan. I mean, I spent like about 3 years in the summer going there, and I think anybody that knows me, knows I love Michigan State, love Michigan State basketball, I love the state of Michigan, and I always saw myself staying there. And then after college, I I didn't really know what to do with this China stuff, and I had a company that called me up and said, hey, we're looking for someone to go over to China to represent our company. Like, would you want to do that? And at that time, I was 22, and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I moved there. At that age, I think that's the time that you want to do something like that. And then it just ended up snowballing into 7 years.
But then the culture, I mean, and it's such a change. Like when you think of living in the Midwest of the U.S. and then, learning Chinese, which I can only imagine is extremely challenging, and then taking that knowledge and then now you have to use it every single day in a culture that is seen as very, very different. I mean, most people from the U.S. don't ever get an opportunity in their lifetime to go to Asia. And it's definitely not like when I think, okay, where am I going to go and spend my money if I go on vacation overseas? China's probably not the first destination
not even
for most
my
people.
top 10.
I mean, so I get from like a cultural standpoint, like how challenging was that to kind of switch gears? I mean, don't they just work differently? And you hear a lot of horror stories over here, about what goes on the other side.
Fake news.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of fake news. You think you have fake news in this country, you're not even close when you come to China, man. It is nuts. I think for the first, but it was an adventure, and again, I go back to my age, there's a certain amount of naivete that comes into play, right? Like everything's cool to you. And even I just remember that all the hijinks, all the weird stuff that would happen to me, all of the misunderstandings, like I would laugh it off, right? Because I was just thought it was so funny and interesting and stuff. And then there's a certain amount of fatigue that comes in after a few years where you're a little bit older. And part of why I'm home now, and I moved back recently to Michigan, was because I kind of did get a little bit tired of it. China's unlike going to another country, like a Western country, like Europe, Germany, something like that, where you have a bit of a semblance and an understanding of how things work, and the culture is very similar. China is just this black hole. Like it's a weird effing place, and you can only get on an elevator so many times, and people are talking behind your back in Chinese, asking. They would literally be like, "So, how tall is he?" Like they'd be talking in Chinese, like, how tall is he? Like, is he 2 meters? Do you think he's 2 meters tall? And then I would turn around and be like, no, I'm actually like, 1.95 in Chinese. And they're like, oh my God, he understood what I was saying. Like, but that wears off. Like that wears off after a while. It's not as funny anymore. Like that kind of stuff. So.
Well, what was the strangest part about being in China? Because it seems like, you got tired of what exactly? Like, those situations I could see.
Just things don't work right. They just don't work right. All of the new shit, like paying your wireless bill, and like your broadband internet goes out of nowhere, and like even like banking stuff, just because all the simple stuff like just that you take for granted here, getting your gas and all, like it's all in Chinese. It's all in a different language. And then applying for work visas and trying to maintain employment, once you get to a point where you're trying to live an adult life and all of the things that you set up in your life, it's much more challenging to do that in a foreign country. And
I struggle with that here.
Yeah.
So I understand.
Yeah. So it's, and the people too, right? There's 20 million people in Beijing. That's a lot of freaking people. So, I'm kind of sounding like like a war veteran here, which I'm certainly not. But it's like you do go through a lot of shit, and it's just when you're a younger person, it's kind of fun because you're doing it for the first time. But when you're a little bit older, it's like I don't really need to deal with this anymore.
Yeah. Well, and you're still involved though with a business digital marketing company in China that you started a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
So interestingly, it's so funny, like how life works out, because I went to China 7 years ago full time, and what I ended up getting into was related to my regular life in America. I 3 years ago got involved in sports marketing. It's so ironic that Brad, you were such a great player, and it was fun to watch you play. And I had no idea that I would ever get involved in sports professionally, and let alone having to go across the world and still get into the sports business. It's kind of funny. So what happened was I 3 years ago got hired by this company called Sina, which is kind of like the Yahoo of China. Although, it's a little misleading because it's in a better market position in China than Yahoo is in this market. But and they were looking for help in their sports channel. So it's a 5,000 person company. It's listed on the NASDAQ. It's a huge, digital media giant. But they're all Chinese. So I was the first white guy that they ever hired. So it was like me and 5,000 Chinese people.
Was that the elevator that you were in when you were?
Many elevators were done. many elevator rides were done in that fashion. Yes.
So out of 5,000 people that worked there, you literally the only white dude?
Yeah.
Were you also
That's
the tallest?
So funny.
I actually had a colleague in my department, William, who that was a bit taller than me. He played basketball in college in China, but I didn't even have that going for me. I was just the white guy.
Wait, so when you were at Sina, you were primarily working to build the NBA division, correct?
Well, no. 2014-15 was an interesting time in the Chinese market for sports, particularly because the government decided to announce that they were going to support the development of sports, and so then everybody started putting a lot of money into it. So Sina had been the largest digital sports platform in China for about 20 years, but they started to lose out because a lot of these other companies were going out and buying the media rights to broadcast the sports like the NBA. So Tencent, which is a big competitor of Sina in 2015, went out and paid gobs of money to get the exclusive rights to broadcast the NBA. And this happened across a lot of different other sports leagues. That's rights were going elsewhere. So Sina had to get creative and kind of work on a tighter budget, let's say, and because they didn't have any live rights anymore. So that's what they hired me to do, is to help go out and work creatively with groups like the NBA or the NFL or English Premier League, and say, we're not going to give you millions and millions of dollars to get your live broadcasting, but we can market for you because we still have 20 million people coming to our website every day. So we would do these kind of strategic partnerships. We would get highlights and other stuff that wasn't going to cost us a huge amount of money, and yet would help to build the brand of these partners we were working with.
So are these games being just streamed on Sina's live stream website, or are they on a cable network that we would watch here, like ESPN, ESPN2?
No, so in China it's all it's all digital. At least I should say for Sina it's all digital. Like Tencent, these big digital platforms are not they're not on cable television, because the cable is controlled by China Central Television. So in the sports world, it's all digital, or it's on CCTV5, which is a Chinese, television nationally controlled station for sports. And then you have some of these digital platforms that have what's called OTT, the OTT services, and they have their own smart TVs, and then they'll broadcast games, but that's still digital.
Well, I was amazed when I'm looking up these stats on China, how big, basketball is in China, and specifically the NBA. First NBA game was broadcast in China in 1986. NBA partnered with Tencent in 2015 to broadcast a very large number of games just a few years ago. 2.9 billion views on Weibo during last year's NBA playoffs, and the NBA is currently the number one most followed league in China, which those numbers are incredible. And it really has been a long history of basketball in China. I mean, how has this all happened? And when I was in Beijing, visiting you, and I was in Hong Kong, Beijing for about 2 weeks, I would go into small restaurants, and I'd see Kobe Bryant on the front, promoting and advertising for these Chinese companies. And you'd walk to the middle of Beijing, and you'd see Houston Rockets stuff. You'd see Yao Ming. You'd see LeBron James, Stephon Marbury. How did all of this happen in China? I mean, everywhere you go, you see jerseys everywhere, and it really is becoming, a large part of the lifestyle.
Well, basketball and soccer, I think those are the two most pervasive sports around the world. And I think the NBA has done a fantastic job of committing to a vision and understanding that they have a special game that is playable by all different people, all different walks of life. And China is, kind of part of that. And David Stern, you're talking about the first NBA game broadcasted in 1986, and David Stern was at the helm of the NBA at that time. And throughout, the late 80s and the early 90s, he committed to China and could see that this market, with at that time close to 1 billion people, now you have 1.4 billion people. He's like, we have to be here. And he would take trips to China, and he would go to CCTV, and he would literally just give them the tapes and say, play this. No money, they're not going to charge China to the CCTV to play the games at that time because there was no market demand, and just kind of over a sustained period, committed to that. And then, the real big boon though was 2002 when Yao Ming was drafted and changed everything, because now you have this huge Chinese guy that represents their entire country that everybody's like, whoa, he's playing in the American NBA. That's fascinating. And it's even to this day, the Houston Rockets, Yao Ming hasn't been playing there for a number of years. It's still China's team. So, James Harden is one of the most popular players now. I mean, they love him. So that's kind of the cliff notes of how it's developed to this point. But man, like the NBA, that's a case study for how you build it over time. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is, 1986 first game was played. They think that the NBA has always been this big in China. It's not the case.
Well, and Kobe Bryant, a guy that you see everywhere, he has been to China every year since 1998. I mean, he's made a very big commitment to the Chinese market, and I think that's a big part why he continues to be, the most popular NBA player, even though he retired a few years ago. They actually completed a deal where Kobe Bryant will be working with NBA in China to open up the first basketball school that will be completed in 2019. And Yao Ming, since he is retired, has continued to do a lot for the basketball program in China as well. Yeah,
I mean, Kobe excelled on the court. The LA Lakers, Los Angeles as a gateway city for a lot of Chinese. That no surprise that's a team that people gravitate to. Chinese are a bit surface level still with sports and luxury brands in general. I mean, they don't really look too far down. So the big stars are always going to get the most number of fans. People like LeBron as well. Kobe as in retirement is probably going to get a significant paycheck, many paychecks from the Chinese market, no question. And I think for sports in China and in particular basketball, the Chinese understand that they need expertise from foreign markets. They need to work with these stars and the business people behind the stars to develop their local sports infrastructure. I mean, the Chinese even know that their own domestic leagues are just terrible. They're no good. And so Yao Ming's been now brought in as he is the head of the Chinese Basketball Association now, which is a pretty big deal because previously it's always been these government cadres that run this stuff.
And so what's the talent level of the CBA? Because, we see over here Jordan Crawford, we talked to him a couple weeks ago, he'll score 81 points.
Right.
I mean, you'll see J.R. Smith went over.
Wanted to see how many he could score.
Yeah, so I mean, it just felt like Jordan, when we talked to him, felt like he was just like playing with these guys, and if he wanted to go get 50, he could get 50. So where is their talent level? Obviously it's not what it is here in the U.S., being that the U.S. has been the best basketball talent market for players.
How would Brad Redford fare in the CBA?
Yeah, it'd be like back at Frankfurt High School, dude. You'd be like 38 points a game. I mean, Jimmer Fredette's killing it over there, too.
Yeah. And he's very, very well liked over there.
It's not good.
Yeah.
They don't have the skill and they don't have the development structure. Yeah. I mean, most of the league and these professional players from China, they come through these training schools. It's not organic. They don't value sports yet as a culture, and that's part of why the government is investing and trying to develop that from the grassroots level.
Wasn't it that they have a much higher value on education and intelligence and lifting those people up to be stars?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Well, but they're supposed to play. It's one track path. You know, you're going to play basketball or you're not. You're going to be a gymnast or you're not. Like they don't really have a structure where we have in this country, where you go to school from 8 a.m. to 3 o'clock, but you're supposed to be and you're encouraged to do extracurricular stuff, whether that's forensics or debate or of course sports. And so that's changing, but it's going to take a long time, and that reflects in the talent level and the level of competition that you see in their domestic leagues. And so I think Yao Ming's trying to change that. We set up a deal like. So
when you say we, what do you mean?
Oh, so at Sina, I work with the National Basketball League in Australia, which has a pretty high level of talent and good competition. It's a smaller league. It's like it's only 8 teams, but guys like Travis Trice, he plays there. Like Steve Blake has played there a couple of times, and so they've been very forward looking and partnering with Yao Ming to increase the interaction and allow these Chinese players to come over, play these friendly games, and try to learn from some of these leagues that have a higher level of competition. The NBA too is doing some kind of similar stuff, but the competition level in China is still pretty poor. I mean, the guy that obviously speaks the most for Chinese basketball is Stephon Marbury. I mean, he's become.
And is he still playing right now?
He's done.
Or did he
He's
retire?
finally done. He did, I think. I want to say eight or 9 seasons.
His story
Are
is
the shoes still selling?
Oh, the Starberries.
The Starberries? I used to have a pair.
He's
a crazy
for like
story.
3 days, and then they ripped
they
out.
broke. Exactly.
Those were rough, dude.
Just one twisted ankle, and then they were done.
Oh man,
Like, his story's
Those things were made out of
crazy.
cardboard. They were
I mean,
terrible.
he was a Park legend in New York, played for the Knicks,
Yeah.
a highly touted player, had a good NBA career, not a great NBA career, but then he goes to China, I mean, and he has statues of him in China.
Yeah,
I mean, he is
wild.
I mean, is he considered as the Michael Jordan of China?
Well,
Or is that too
think
much of a stretch for Stephon?
He's a national hero. I think
Stephon Marbury is a
hilarious.
national hero
He's increased
in China.
Yeah, three-time CBA champion, man. But people don't know as well. I mean, he obviously had a rough go towards the end of his NBA career, and then somebody took him to China and said you could play here. And actually, his first couple of seasons in China were really bad. He played for some of the smaller teams. There's a small team out of Foshan in southern China, and then Guangzhou. And after I think 2 or 3 seasons, he's about ready to call it a day. He's like, screw this, I'm done. And then somehow his agent or somebody, maybe it was a woman, I don't know, convinced him to go up to Beijing and play for the Beijing Ducks, and it changed it changed the whole thing. So, but yeah, they love him. So he played, I think, 6 years for the Beijing Ducks and won 3 titles, and he completely changed his life around and his whole public image, because when you go to China, compared to this bad boy status he has in America, in China he's looked at they literally call him Teacher Ma. He's somebody that everybody looks up to. So
That's amazing.
And they gave him so it's very hard to get. You can't really get citizenship as a non-Chinese person in China, and he's every year they give like a handful of green cards to foreign people to become permanent residents of China, and he got one of them. And then they freaking built him you go to Beijing, you can see this Stephon Marbury statue.
I thought you were joking with
No,
the statue.
it's real. It's
literally
a statue
a statue of Stephon.
Yeah, no, I was not kidding at all.
How big is the statue?
Well, I don't know. How tall is he?
I mean, life size,
Oh,
right? He's about
actual,
6 feet tall.
Yeah, it doesn't fit in your pocket, dude.
I didn't know if it was
It's like
larger than
it's like the Big O at Fifth
I mean,
Third.
it's not like something you can see from the air, but it's a statue. And they had a big ceremony about it.
That's crazy.
So he's finally done, but he had quite a run. But they just made a movie. It was awful.
Was the movie? It was just a documentary, wasn't
My
it?
Other Home, I think it was called.
Was it a documentary, or was this actual actors?
You got to watch it. It's Stephon Marbury playing Stephon Marbury.
Oh, nice.
What was the production?
Incredible.
Was it a Chinese-based production company?
I think
was
so. It was the movie's mostly in Chinese, but he's not. I mean, he's speaking English. But Allen Iverson makes a cameo.
Oh wow! And you actually, didn't you meet
I did.
Allen Iverson one time? Because this is a fantastic story. So Drew Neitzel, who's a friend of mine who played for Michigan State, was playing on a team over in China, and Allen Iverson ended up being one of Drew's teammates. So I got Dan and Drew connected, and then he ended up going out with those guys to the club after the game. And the meeting of Dan and Allen Iverson meeting is absolutely classic and one of my favorite stories.
I was at kind of a black tie event before this, and Drew, I hadn't heard from Drew for a few days, and I thought, yeah, he must be busy. And then like I'm at this black tie event, and I get this email from Drew like, hey man, sorry, I've been busy, I've been playing basketball. Yeah, that makes sense. And but we're at this club. We got this private booth if you want to come out. And I look at my buddy, I'm like, yeah, you want to go hang out with Drew Neitzel and Allen Iverson at the club? And he's like, yeah, I think we should do that. So we just like drove across, like still wearing our black tie suits and everything. And it was this crazy club. It was this big Chinese club, like wall to wall people. And then you see like, you could easily see where the basketball players were. Like it's just like a foot over everybody, and then you got like Drew's like dancing up. I mean, they're literally like dancing on stage. It was just crazy. But you got Allen Iverson sitting next to the stage, and he's just about like what everybody says he is. Like not really there, and he's literally
That's a great way to put it.
He's sitting on the stage, and he's got this comically large bottle of Grey Goose. Like it's like half of him is the size. And so I go over there, and I get somebody handed me a beer, and I'm just walking. I'm like, hey, Mr. Iverson. I literally said that. Like,
you should have said that. Was your voice that high pitched when you approached him?
It might have been.
Hi, I'm Dan.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm Drew's buddy. I'm Drew's buddy. He just looks at me, and he's just like, no words. He just like, yeah. All right, great, good talk.
Yeah.
And you know who else was on that trip? Dennis Rodman.
Oh, so was Rodman there as well?
Unfortunately not, but his manager was there. And the funniest thing was like the manager's standing there, and he's getting in an argument with the service people. And I'm like listening into what's happening, and then I realize what's happening. He's arguing with them because they won't accept his U.S. dollars because we're in China, so it's like, you got to pay with Chinese money. Yeah. But he was yelling at them, and he goes, "My money is better than your money."
Oh, jeez,
it was great, but yeah, he kind of has a point. But anyways, it was it's been fun. The switching gears of football. If you want to talk a little bit about American football.
Yeah, so I do want to touch on this story. We have Eric Nauman calling in at 8 o'clock, but I do want to get to the Wendell Brown story as well. Do you want to touch on that, or do you want to talk about Chris briefly?
About
Chris McLaren.
Well, yeah, so I started getting a little bit involved in the American football a couple of years ago through this guy, Chris McLaren, who played football at University of Michigan. And really interesting guy. He got a great story. You should have him on sometime. He's still living in China, but grew up in Detroit and started the American Football League of China, which now you have like about 20 grassroots football teams playing across China. It's pretty fascinating stuff. Actually, Sony Pictures bought the rights to his life, so at some point you may see this movie come out about the American Football League.
Sorry, just seeing Chinese people playing football just makes me laugh, and it's hard for me to get beyond that.
How is it? Like, how grassroots are we talking?
It's pretty rough.
Yeah, like bottom.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
like funded at all?
No, not really.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's pretty raw.
That's great.
No, he literally started. He formalized it a bit because he was living in this city called Chongqing, which is out in western China. He was working for some hedge fund or something. And somebody said that there was guys playing football down the street, and he didn't believe them. And so he walked down the street, and like these guys, they were struggling, but they had a football, and they were playing football, but it was terrible. And so he just like started to coach them, and then realized that there's this actual national network of these grassroots guys that get together and play. It's pretty funny stuff. But my understanding, and I've watched a couple of games, like you have about 70% Chinese guys and then 30% expats. Guys like, well, not like me because I'm not playing any football, but Americans that play football. So that level of competition is just it's like Pop Warner stuff. But anyway, so the thing I want to talk about, and something that should be interesting to your listeners, and something we're working on, is there's a tragic story unfolding as we speak here, because Chris had a guy. He frequently gets American football players that have played in college to come over to China to coach. one of these guys was a guy by the name of Wendell Brown from Detroit who played for Ball State, really talented guy, and went over there to this city, Chongqing, 3 years ago to coach. And after about a year there, he was about ready to come home, got into an unfortunate incident at a bar with some locals and ended up in jail. And he's been sitting in jail for almost 2 years.
And from my understanding, and we'll put the video at the end, so anybody listening that wants to watch it or share it, you would be awesome. But Wendell's story. I mean, he essentially went into a bar. Very quickly got into a fight that he did not start. Right. And then the police, and I believe he was in Chongqing.
Chongqing, yep.
He was in Chongqing, and then they basically have taken him in, and he's been there for a number of years now. And the challenge now is trying to figure out how the heck are we going to be able to get him back to the States.
Yeah, it's really a rough situation. I mean, he sat there for almost a year before it went to trial, and there were a number of reasons why that happened. And then the trial happened last July, and evidence was inconclusive, and they've just still allowed him to sit in this jail waiting for a verdict to come down. So I got involved in this, about end of last year, about November, right after the LiAngelo Ball UCLA situation, because that's when some news came out, because those guys got arrested, and then with the help of some well-placed individuals, including President Trump, they were able to get out. They have no idea how lucky they were, because you could be in jail there for a long time and not know why or when. There's so much misinformation, and there's a language barrier. So after that, when the story came out on Yahoo Sports about this, which is probably the most high-profile story about this yet, myself and kind of a cohort of Michiganders and Detroiters that are in China got involved, and I can't believe I'm still talking about it right now. He's still sitting in there. It's really challenging, and my heart goes out to him. So I've gotten to know his family over the last couple of months. Really nice folks that live in Detroit. His mom, is just devastated. They haven't been able to speak to him.
Well, what's the solution? How does this get resolved? How can people help with the situation that Wendell has? I mean, can you imagine someone that 30 years old, and if you take a look at the video, very energetic guy, very vibrant guy. I mean, really an ambassador, for American football in China. Wrongfully accused of something that he was just protecting himself. How do people help? How does this get resolved so we can get him home and get him back to the States and Detroit safely?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's really no easy answer to that question. As an individual, and like you said, you'll play the video. We're going to be running a viral campaign, hashtag Bring Wendell Home, and you'll see in the video kind of the call to action. Just showing that you care and that you want to see this man be returned to his family and post that on your social media is helpful. If you reach out to your representative or your senator and say, if you could please lend a hand to help, that's also helpful. I mean, just making some more noise about this guy, and that could be helpful to tip the balance. But we're hoping this thing comes to an end soon, because his family's just going through hell, and it's unnecessarily.
All right, Dan. Well, that was fun. We appreciate you coming on the Be Different podcast, talking a little bit of Michigan State. I know I was a little bit hard on Izzo initially, but at Michigan State with guys like you and other alums, we're going to see Tremaine Redford here.
That's right.
This evening. So he's another Michigan State guy that will be important in moving the program forward. We talk basketball in China, influential players, as well as Wendell Brown, and we'll make sure to play that at the end. And Dan, I feel like it would only be fitting at this point to sign off by saying, and that is it for the Be Different podcast in Chinese, and we'll cut it out. And Greg Wichard, Nick Given, it's a blessing to see you guys as always. Dan, go ahead and sign us off.
今天的 Be Different 博客就结束了，我们到这儿了，下一次再见。
And we are out.